Hello, I'm Alex Metricardi, Chief Marketing and Public Relations Officer for Living Branches, and today is Friday, May 8th. Welcome to you and welcome to Ed Brubaker, our President and CEO, for another one of our weekly chats. I am reminded that this is week 6 of our chats, and for the first time we have to issue a correction. So would you like to issue a correction, or would you like me to issue the correction, as it's really my mistake?
Well, it might have been your mistake, but I repeated the error. Essentially, the error was that when we talked about the answer to the question last week about not having employees go between campuses, it is true that we don't have them go between campuses that are COVID positive or COVID negative. So persons who may work at Souderton Night Homes or the Willows are not going to Dock Woods. We try to minimize other persons going between campuses. And when I say persons, I'm talking about employees who are direct caregivers, not other persons who may just be dropping off something or minimally involved between the campuses. And so we do have just a few, I think it may only be 2, but let's just say it's minimal number of persons that may work between campuses. And that would be between Souderton and the Willows. And so that is what we're doing. Last week, I think we inferred and said nothing's happening between a campus that's positive and a campus that's negative, and that is true. But I think there may have also been the inference that it wasn't happening elsewhere as well. And so we just wanted to clarify that point. There's not same day unless they shower and change and et cetera. So we do try to take precautions. And we do feel that that is very safe to do so, particularly with no known cases, no known active cases. But we did want to make sure that that was corrected. And thank you to the sharp viewer that brought that up as well.
Let's start first this week with some of our test results. And I'm happy to be able to tell everyone that we continue to have no residents or staff testing positive for the virus, either at the Willows of Living Branches or at Souderton Mennonite Homes, which of course is very good news. On our Dock Woods campus, we continue to have our 2 residents in Dock Manor, which is our HUD housing for seniors. And then let's talk more specifically about what's going on in Harmony House and Dock Terrace, because we do have some interesting news, I think at least, from Harmony House that I think people would like to hear about.
Yes, and we actually did have some, I would say, good news this week. And we were finding that the symptoms that people were experiencing in Harmony House, in most cases, not in every situation, I think we have a few that are still not doing as well as we would hope, but there were others that were actually doing much better. And so we did do our first round of retesting because we were 3 weeks out from the original testing in Harmony House. And so we wanted to check to see where things were at. And so we had some good results. I think one came back, if I recall correctly, that was still positive, which was also something to think about because that was 3 weeks out. So we also understand that seniors may shed the virus, if you will, for longer than the typical amount of time. So testing is quite important. But we were pleased to see that others had gone from negative to positive, or other negatives had stayed negative. Now, it's premature to celebrate too much, but we want to do some additional retesting next week. And this is all part of our longer term, not getting back to pre-March normal, but to having things ease up a bit in Harmony House just for the residents there, because it's really important for them to have the ability to get outside of their rooms, et cetera. Important for everyone, frankly, but quite important in a memory care unit. So we're very pleased with those results, and we'll continue to hope for the best as we go into the next week.
And then in Dock Terrace, we made the decision this week to go ahead and test all of our residents. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, we did do that, and I know on the various videos we've talked about the pros and cons of testing, the importance of what are you going to do with the results, the reality of a negative result is a negative at the time of testing and does not presuppose that someone will stay negative, And so there's so many challenges, I guess I would say, around testing. And so we don't take testing lightly. We don't just forge forward with doing testing without saying, what are we going to do with the results of those tests? And how is that going to impact our behavior? Because I believe it's not just an exercise in finding out who's positive and who's negative. It's an exercise in saying who's positive and who's negative, and then what do we do with those results? What does that make as far as any changes in what we do? And so we did want to get a baseline essentially for everyone or almost everyone in Doc Terrace, the healthcare center at Doc Woods. And so we did that. And so we're doing a cohorting of those residents. Cohorting meaning grouping the people who were positive together. Part of the reason for that is to try to keep the negative residents negative and to separate with some separation. But it also helps us with PPE management. I would say regardless of what you may hear in the media or elsewhere, personal protective equipment is not as readily as available as you might think or you might hope or you might hear. And right now, it's gowns that are the problem. And so we have a real challenge finding gowns, and they are very expensive. And so we are doing the best we can. It kind of shifted from the N95, and we've found ways to clean the N95 masks as well, so we can use them longer. But frankly, in the industry across the country, gowns are where the issue is. And so that's part of the reason too for cohorting people, that it makes the management of personal protective equipment easier and more efficient in that way to try to preserve what we have. And so that was then an outcome that we said we need to move people. Now, I would say this. It is much easier for you and I to talk about, well, let's look at a test. Let's look at the results. Let's move people around. That's easy to talk about in a meeting. It is a whole lot more difficult. And I know there were difficult family conversations this week, and understandably so, that families didn't want their loved one moved or had some concerns about that. It was hard for staff too, because for them, they were wanting to care these people through their disease and illness. They know them, and now that gets shifted around and they may not be caring for the same people. So to talk about what may be right or best in theory is a whole lot different than carrying it out in practice. And so honestly, my heart just goes out to the staff, the families, and the residents who had to experience this. But we truly felt it was going to be the best thing to do. But it was very hard, and I don't want to minimize that reality because it is very hard.
That was an eye-opener, I think, in our meetings this week for me. I was expecting, oh, sure, if I'm a resident and I've been rooming with somebody for months or years, of course I wouldn't want to leave them. So maybe that would be difficult. But I did not consider the impact that it would have on staff and how I know they care for residents, but almost this sense of pride or control or just, I owe this to my residents to get them through. So it was extremely difficult for them.
Yeah, that I would say that emotional connection and frankly the love that our residents have for the staff, but also the staff for the resident is an important part of what makes this place special. But when it comes to these kind of things, it's also what makes it very difficult. And you know, there are CNAs that work in Doc Terrace that have worked there 35 plus years. Okay, these are not people that just started last week. Now we have newer ones as well, but the point is people have worked here for a long time and they form relationships with the residents. We have a person here that unfortunately, we have a number of staff persons that have contracted it too, and the one I'm thinking of was putting in a lot of time because she wanted to help. She was intent on helping the residents, and I understand from the director of healthcare services and the assistant, that she is like chomping at the bit to come back to work because she wants to get back to work and help care for these people. That's the kind of commitment and the type of persons our staff are. And so when you have that, they also make an emotional bond and an emotional connection. And so these things are hard. They're very hard.
Yeah, definitely. And maybe just to summarize, so when we tested all of the residents in Country Cottage and in Dock Terrace, we have 54%, that's 31 individuals who did test positive, just in case anyone is following along at home. And all of this information, of course, is on our website, so people are welcome to check that out there. So we have a hard resident question this week for you. I guess we're starting to play Stump Ed. So this question is from Abram, and he says, a hard question to ask, but I think it needs to be addressed at some point. Why is there such a big difference in the number of cases at Dock Woods versus Souderton Mennonite Homes or the Willows?
Yeah, and that is a good question, and it is a hard question. And I would say the short answer, and maybe even the long answer, is this: we don't know. We really don't know. And part of the challenge is, and I know you expected me to give a long answer. I'm not necessarily known for short ones, but the point is that we really don't know, but there are various reasons that perhaps could play into this. However, I'm not going to delve into many of those because it's pure and simple conjecture, not based on science, not based on facts. And so a lot of that stuff may make interesting newspaper articles, it may make interesting conversation, but it's not the type of thing that's appropriate to share because it's no basis in fact. But having said that, I would say this. In addition to the fact that we don't know, and this virus is a very tricky thing, the other side of it is there are more residents on the Dock Woods campus than there are at Souderton. So just as you watched the news and saw in New York City, there was a lot of spread, a lot of people next to each other. And by no means am I comparing Dock Woods to New York City as far as size, but the point is, it is a larger campus by a few hundred people than the Souderton campus. Does that have an impact? Does it not? I don't know. I know there's large nursing homes in New York City that had large numbers of persons impacted. So just even percentage-wise, that's going to cause more to be impacted. But once it gets into a facility, it is very hard to control. It's a microscopic virus. It can spread in ways we don't even fully understand. So that's one reason I would say it's a larger campus. So there's more people that could be in and out, staff or residents, frankly. And I know residents in the healthcare are in the facility, but there's other residents that are coming on campus, albeit not coming through the healthcare center, et cetera. So that would certainly be one explanation. Other than that, honestly, it's hard to know, because the other thing I would say is I've read, as you can imagine, huge number of articles about this. Not just to try to figure out what could it be, but also just to understand what's going on with the disease and where is it going, how's it progressing. And the one thing that has come through loud and clear is do not judge a facility by the number of COVID cases they have. And these are by scientists and physicians because they said it is that hard to track. So there are 5-star rated facilities that have big challenge, and there are 1-star rated facilities that have big challenge. And so we do the best we can. And as a friend of mine reflected when we were talking the other night on the phone, and I think he might have heard it on a video too that I did, but it's just a truism, and that is you need to be able to go to bed at night, every night, and say, I did the absolute best I could for the residents, for the staff, for everyone involved, and say, we don't fully understand. There's sometimes the why question in life that just is not able to be understood, particularly at the time that it's happening. Maybe down the road we'll be understanding more about this disease, but right now it's very difficult to pinpoint what that reason is. And so I work hard with others to control the spread at Dock Woods, and conversely be thankful for the time we're given at Souderton and the Willows that we have not had spread there, knowing that we don't know what the future holds. But for now, we'll do the best we can and be thankful for the small things that we can be thankful for.
Another thing we learned this week that we should share is that Governor Wolf has extended the stay-at-home order for Montgomery and Bucks County and all of us out here at least till June 4th. I know I can speak for myself when I was saying I was hoping miraculously it was going to be lifted sooner than that. But of course, reality strikes again, and we are in this at least through June 4th. And so that has implications for our residents, of course.
Yes, it does, and it implications for our residents and for our staff as well. And I'm not sure if they have a plan in mind to kind of gradually ease us in, but it probably isn't a bad idea, because I suspect if on March 13 they would have told us June 4 is when we're lifting Montgomery County, it would have been a major problem. And so in some ways, we as humans really do need to be eased into things, because it is really amazing the resilience that we have once we're dealing with challenging situations. For me, it wasn't a large surprise because we were the first to go into restrictions, and there's the most cases in southeastern Pennsylvania. So if you look at that from a logical standpoint and a scientific standpoint, it makes all the sense in the world. Whether or not it'll extend beyond that, who knows? We don't know at this point in time. We just need to do the best we can with what we know at the present time and move forward from that. And so that means that essentially things will continue as they have been here at Living Branches, with the restrictions on visitors, with all those kinds of things. We are beginning to think about what could happen in the longer term, but frankly, we can't do too much thinking about that because we have the other day-to-day and realities of the current situation that we need to deal with as well. So that's the reality, and we need to work within that. I also know that there is a special day coming up this weekend, Mother's Day. And it's funny, depending who I talk to, friends of ours, some might say they don't celebrate that because their spouse is not their mother. But certainly we ordered some takeout somewhere to try to support some local businesses too, and I think that's a great way to do it. But having said that, we also had a plant order that people could order plants for their loved ones, and they would get delivered here on campus. Another good way to show you care without coming on the campus and frankly showing you don't care because you need to stay off campus. So we know that's a challenge, and we know it's a special day and people want to celebrate, but there are virtual ways that you can celebrate with your loved one, in this case with your mother. And so we want to encourage doing that as well. So we did set up those alternatives. Hopefully people will find those to be acceptable. But at the end of the day, the reality is we need to continue in this state of lockdown. We've made progress, I think, in this area, but we don't want to have an early withdrawal or an early exit take away from the progress we've made. So it's really important for us to continue to keep disciplined. And I remember in my early, very, very short videos, don't touch your mouth, your eyes, your nose, wash your hands. Still really important stuff to do to make sure you remember to do that. That is a primary way that things spread.
And there's been a lot of conversation this week, maybe increasing conversation about we've got to get back to normal, we've got to get opened back up again. and even talk about counting nursing home numbers as separate from the rest of the county. But I think it's very worthwhile to point out that, yes, our residents may be living in our communities, but our staff are not. And so if the number of cases increases again in the surrounding area, that will impact the residents who are living here.
Yeah, that's right. And it's very important to keep that in mind. And I, while this is a not-for-profit business, I do consider myself to be a business person. It is a large organization, 670 employees, 1,300 residents, almost 200 million in assets, 52 million a year in income. We're not a small mom and pop business. And so we are a business that we need to run and do intelligently. And so I recognize that you can't just shut down the economy for a long period of time. That is hugely damaging. The flip side is this is also a disease that inordinately impacts those that we serve, the population we serve, the age group we serve. So we also need to double down on saying, as we open up things in other places, what are we going to do to protect the older folks who we serve, and not just those we serve, but those in the larger community too. I mean, most people, frankly, don't live in retirement communities who are of these age groups. So we just need to keep that in mind. And so I have no problem with counting people in different ways, but however you do it, just tell the truth. Just say what you're doing. We can handle the truth. What we can't handle is something that seems like something is trying to be hidden. And so we're happy to be part of that conversation and welcome that as well.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you. And thank you for watching. Again, if you need information about the Living Branches response to coronavirus, all of that is on our website at livingbranches.org/coronavirus. And you can also email questions for next week's video to coronavirusquestions@livingbranches.org. Thank you.